Welcome, and thanks for joining me on the Ultimate 180 podcast. If you have ever felt exhausted, overwhelmed, or even trapped in your own life and wish you had a complete life makeover, well, then you are in the perfect place to learn how to pull an Ultimate 180 and change your life beyond all expectations. I'm your host, Christina Walker, and today's episode will be covering one of the most important and actually most often missed steps if you want to shave years off your transformational journey. And in fact, if this step is skipped, you might not even make your ultimate 180 and not even know what's possible for you. So, here to help me today with this topic is the multi-talented performance consultant and complete badass human being, Michael Anders.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Grateful to be
So,
here.
oh, I'm so happy you're here. So, before we dive in, though, I want to share with everyone just a little bit of your background so they know who you are, because you are the founder of Next Level Performance Consulting, and you guys specialize in creating the fittest leaders mentally, physically, and spiritually. And this is the team that you call when you're building your next level life, like when you're building your empire, so that you don't leave yourself behind. And the reason that we're here together today is what I really believe is a crucial step in creating the kind of change that is completely beyond expectation. Nothing you could even think is possible for you. And this is something that Michael is an absolute expert in. So, drum roll, please. What is this crucial step? It's assessment. I know that sounds maybe easy or strange, but Michael, I would love it if you would start us off by telling me, when you think of assessment, tell me what exactly comes to mind for you and tell me why you feel it's such a crucial step.
Well, what's really important about assessments in general, let alone the specific things that we do at Next Level, is they gave you a baseline awareness of your current situation. And that's where most people fail most often is they get fixated on the result and they have no idea where they're starting. So they start down the path either way over their skis and start to fail before they even get started, or they're stuck in their tracks because the mountain looks way bigger than it actually is. And all of that is an indication of a lack of awareness as to where they're currently at.
And it's, when you say awareness, it's funny because I think sometimes even those of us that are kind of more aware or feel like we are coaches, consultants, um, I don't think most of us can see ourselves. And so I feel like there's there's these things inside of us that we don't even realize that it's blocking our way to something spectacular. And I feel like that is one of those vital, it's like a vital step. If you want like a completely different life, something that's amazing, like how do you as a human being sit back and try and really assess yourself if you don't know what you don't know about yourself?
It's so funny that, yeah, I've always said, don't trust a coach who doesn't have a coach,
That makes sense. It's like the
because
psychologist. Don't they have to have like a certain amount of hours with another psychologist?
I mean, I think that's a good job. I think that's a good idea. From a practical standpoint, you can only listen to so many people's problems before you have to start dealing with your own.
True.
And it's like doctors trying to diagnose themselves. They don't, not the good ones anyway.
Well, that's true.
And I don't think, even as coaches and consultants, we're not immune to being human. And when you're in your own situation, depending on your tolerance for stress, it's really easy to get lost in the weeds and lose the objectivity of your situation. And you start letting your feelings and emotions lead the way. And that can, create a downward spiral really quickly. So the function and the purpose of these this outside perspective is to maintain objectivity and not walk the path for you. You have to take the steps, you have to do the reps, and still it's to stand 30,000 feet above your scenario and guide you down the path and keep, put the necessary guardrails in place so that even when you do stray, because none of us are batting 1,000 in this life, you don't stray as far as you would if you were left to your own devices.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, devices, God knows what would happen. Especially me, and I'm talking about myself because you did my assessment. And
Hmm.
I think too is, and I'd love for you to speak on this.
Yeah.
Some of us that have kind of grown up in the corporate world, we've had assessment after assessment after assessment, and we're supposed to use these great assessments to lead
Yeah.
better. And it kind of falls flat, and you're like, I'm an AD or I'm a
Ugh.
I whatever, right? And what's the difference between something like that and actually utilizing that to create change? Because I think some of us think, oh God, not another
Yeah.
assessment. And I did, I'll be
Mhm.
honest, when you said it to me, I was like, here we go. But it's been life altering for me.
Well, that's a really good point that you bring up because I am often met with our clients that are resistant to our assessment. The tool that we leverage is the Berkman. And, whether you're familiar with DISC, Enneagram, Strength Finders, uh, talent dynamics, there's a million out there. And the tool is the tool, but from a consultation standpoint, it's, hey, Christina, here's how you show up in the world when everything is going great. Have a great day. And at a certain point in your personal and professional development, there's not a whole lot of utility in that information.
Right.
And where the Berkman separates itself from the others is we're not only going to tell you, how great you are when everything's going right, we're also going to show you how you show up in your stress when your expectations are going unmet for too long. And a lot of those where the awareness is really critical is that you're stressed and you may not know why. And
Mm,
from the outside looking in, Michael observing Christina, the only two things that I can see at a surface level is how you're showing up when your needs are met and how you're showing up when they're not. What those needs and expectations are, you may not even know. And the downfall and the failure of any relationship, romantic, personal, professional, simply put, is unmet, and I would say more importantly is uncommunicated
yeah.
expectations. So how am I supposed to come through for you if you can't even tell me what you need, not because you don't want to tell me, but because you don't know what to tell me?
And I think I mean, that point right there is huge because, and going through your process as we are still, because it's a lifetime, right? Like even the
Hmm.
more you grow, the more you change, the more you need, I just feel like it's a lifetime process.
Hmm.
And I'm very fortunate to be able to do that with you. And I feel like not knowing when I'm stressed, and you identified something very specific for me to be able to understand in those moments when I'm stressed, when I'm overwhelmed, what happens to me, because all I feel is kind of, cut off to the world, right? We kind of do that when we
Hmm.
feel exhausted or overwhelmed. But by you identifying something I had never heard before, and it really, it has changed my life in such a short period of time.
Hmm.
And I think that's what's so exciting about it is that you like you have be doing an assessment and being able to identify these things so quickly. You make the speed of change so rapid. Do you find that with most of your clients?
Yeah, because I do actually, because ultimately what's born of this newfound level of awareness is we get to answer the question of alignment in real time. So let's say you want to break out of the corporate mold and launch your own entrepreneurial endeavor, and but you're just locked into that and you can't see your way out. Well, now you can, as a result of this new awareness, you can start taking what we refer to as the next easiest step. It's not just up and quitting tomorrow like that.
Right.
Some are able to handle that, most are not. And that's not something I would necessarily recommend for everybody. However, the next easiest step is maybe updating my LinkedIn profile, right? That's a very easy,
Very. Mhm.
small, and still significant step towards that initiative, right? And once you've updated your LinkedIn profile, now you can update your resume, and now you can start submitting emails and inquiries, etc. And all of a sudden, you get 90 days, 6 months down the road, and you've positioned yourself to step away from the corporate mold, right? But it's where people get lost is like, oh shit, I am not ready to quit today. Well, nobody
Yeah,
told you.
even though they really, really want to.
Yeah, nobody told you to do that, nor is that necessarily a good idea,
Right. For most
right?
people, I don't think it
But
is.
but everything in between, the how, the process of it all just is either a mystery, or there's so many damn steps between here and there. It seems like uh it's never going to end, and I'm never going to get there. So where we focus from one engagement to the next is, what's the next easiest step from here?
Right.
We know where we want to go. We have our North Star, our lighthouse, but let's talk about the next step.
And I think that's what I love about your process is it's not only just tangible, right? You have a next step. You always leave with a next step.
Mhm.
And then you also have this data about yourself. So as you're going along, right, you're
Mhm.
correcting your path.
Yeah.
And then I feel like that's when the magic happens is because if you stayed on that same path,
Mm.
even with those small steps, you would end up somewhere very different than if you're if you're correcting right
Mhm.
along the way to something better, and you're giving us like a tangible item to do, but then it's your world is expanding over here. And I
Mhm.
think that's the difference in what you do. And when I think of assessment now,
Yeah.
because I might not have maybe a year ago even thought, well, this is a critical, this is critical. But I think the way you do it, and then also is that people, I really think that it doesn't feel okay, so I have assessment. Do I want to invest in that? And I feel like, as you said, there's little steps along the way to gaining, your entrepreneurial, whatever it
Mhm.
is that you
Yep.
want to do. And they think of that as an investment, right? Like, by having somebody help you build your resume, right? They'll
Mhm.
they'll lay out $500,000 for it. But I think even before that, what's more critical, if you want to get to that absolute cool next level beyond your expectations, is to invest in yourself by having a coach to work with to assess. I mean, I'm guessing that is kind of what you've started to build your business, right? You found that that is something that's probably more critical than building the resume first.
Yeah, I mean 100%. So your ultimate 180 is the how fast you make that turnaround is going to be has a direct correlation with your investment, whether that's time, energy, money, all of the above, in your own personal growth.
And
Because
honestly, I think, and I'm so sorry, but I think
yeah.
you just hit the nail on the head. I think if you're putting your investment money in the right places,
Mhm.
that also right gets that momentum going. And I think you could just throw spaghetti at a wall if you don't, because you don't know what you don't know. But if you do it right by getting some sort of assessment and
Mhm.
learning kind of where you are at when you're great and happy and where you're when you're not, especially when you're not, I think that's it, right? That's that turnaround time. That makes that turnaround time.
Mhm.
You could literally shave years. Don't you agree? Years.
Yeah, I mean, with the executives I've worked with in the corporate environment, with the entrepreneurs and folks that people of influence that we've worked with over the years, the we operate and execute in principle. And we can argue method and how we're going to do some things, but the principles are tried and true and inarguable. So when we're talking about, for example, infrastructure. I have a client, we started, building his fitness, dropped him at 40 pounds. Life's supposed to be great because we solved the physical problem. And
Right.
yet, his intimacy with his wife was still at an all-time low. The business that he has spent the last 2 decades building and is extremely profitable is now the anchor in his life, as opposed to the vehicle for his financial freedom. But we solved the physical problem. So why are all these other factors not improving with it?
Mm.
Well, your fitness or lack thereof is actually a symptom of these other things that haven't been dealt with.
Ooh, I like that.
So
That's interesting.
once we identified what the real issues were, we got to work and started taking the next easiest steps in those directions. Those in the specific case being hiring an interim CEO to position the company for acquisition. And now, 18 months later, his company was acquired. He had an 8-figure exit. He now sits on the board
Nice.
of this portfolio collecting a dividend. And now he's only engaged in the business, doing the things that he loved doing in that, as opposed to all the other things that didn't necessarily serve him.
Now, had he thought about even acquisition as a thought process in his head before?
What we had to get to was to simply acknowledge the difficult truth that he had taken the company as far as he could with the skills that he had.
That's pretty awesome. That's a difficult place to get to on your own, I'm guessing.
When you're as deep in the weeds of the operations as he was never going to see that for himself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I would guess that's pretty common. I mean, just knowing having gone through this, like to be
Mhm.
able to get in there and assess somebody at that kind of level, that's pretty incredible. I mean, is that I mean, I'm sure you have lots of client stories, but
Mhm.
like, what's the client story that you're like, man, like that was wild. Like, I can't believe we got in there and found that out, or, without sharing, of course, your
Yeah, no, no, no,
client privilege.
absolutely. That one's at 100% one of my absolute favorites. Another is a client that uh, 80% of his revenue came from one client, one source. And where he thought he had a safe and protected asset was actually his largest liability. Because if that client decides to go somewhere else, then
He has no business.
we're in deep shit.
Yeah.
So pardon my French. So so the but at the same time, he's still wearing a lot of hats. So he didn't have the time or the bandwidth to go out and solicit more prospects.
Sure. I think that's
So,
pretty common problem.
but and he was also reluctant to beef up his infrastructure and grow his team to create that availability, because really and truly, as the visionary of his company, his genius lies not in operations, even though he's extremely good at what he does. It's really the uh, client management, relationship building end of the business that he really thrives in and truly enjoys. So, how do we set you up so that the majority of your time is dedicated to the people part, so that, and then operations can be left to somebody else who resides under that umbrella in that genius?
I think that's the exciting part is that, I think that's a lot of people's dreams is to really just figure out, well, here are the things that I love to do,
Hmm.
not like in a traditional job sense, but here's the things that I love to do. And then how do I make that work? Even with the current commitments that I have and that I've committed to in life, right?
Hmm.
Whether it's a family, a business, whatever. And then to know that that's possible, right? To be able to, I mean, that's truly possible. And I think that people don't believe a lot of times that it is very possible to be able to pick out, the skills and the things that you love and probably make even more money, feel
Hmm.
freer, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
I think we're just, taught in a way we don't know what we don't know about ourselves. And I
Hmm.
love that that is really what you get, right? You really
Oh
find
yeah.
out like, wow, that's possible for me.
Hmm.
I think that's so cool.
One of my favorite epiphanies for our clients is for them to realize that they're actually closer to where they want to be than they actually realize. They just create these stories in their head. Another one that comes to mind, executive for a Fortune 500 publicly traded company, and he had created this narrative that his role in the business was way more critical than it actually was, and the behavior that was driven by this story is one of micromanagement, zero boundaries, and
For
just
himself.
for himself, and a lot of self-induced obligation.
Mm.
So now he's in this situation where he's put himself on this pedestal, and he has zero work-life balance, if that's even such a thing. But work was 100% interfering with his personal development, and he didn't have room to enjoy the things that he had built into the leisure end of his life. So he'd be out on the golf course and all he's thinking about is work.
Oof.
And then he's at work and all he's thinking about is playing golf. So you're not present for anything.
Yeah, that's a pretty common story too, I think.
So, it's really, but then when we got him, when we freed him of that, all the emotionality tied to that narrative, and we're like, dude, you get you get to travel the world. You play golf literally whenever you want. And when you're on the golf course, that business has not fallen apart.
Yeah.
So just giving him the appreciation for what he actually does, the actual currency of his position beyond uh the X's and O's of holding your team accountable to KPIs and whatnot, and just saying, hey, if you trust your team and you've developed them in the way that you've told yourself you have, is it necessary for all that micromanagement and obligation?
Yeah. That's amazing that somebody actually like heard you. Right?
Well, yeah.
I know you put it in a way that you kind of have to hear you because you're going to call your ass on it, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
but which is great. But I think we all know a micromanager, but to be able to for somebody even at that level to
Hmm.
really see themselves and make that kind of change. I mean, that's inspiring. I think it should be inspiring for everybody. Like, well, if he can do that, then what can I do? Right
Well,
now
no.
he's traveling the world, right? Playing golf,
Hmm.
doing what he likes to do.
Hmm. And it's not, when you take this next easiest step approach, it's not as um monstrous an initiative as we like to think it is. And that mindset keeps us stuck where we're at. But you know what? I can do that. I can take this time audit seriously. I can reschedule myself back into my own life. I can delegate certain tasks off my plate. I don't need to be there for that meeting that I've forced myself into week after week after week, only to, as soon as my ass touches the seat, I realize and have to admit to myself, I really don't need to be here.
Yeah.
So where could I be putting that productivity? Where could I be giving back to myself? Where could I be in my highest and best use for me, for the company, for my family, whatever? Like none of this is an excuse to become lackadaisical or complacent. No, 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 no,
Right.
no, no, no. This is all the utility of this awareness that is born of this assessment is to create that 180 so that you are living in as much of a flow state as consistently as possible. And when you're doing that, the things that are of highest production value for you are also tend to take the least amount of energy.
Isn't that crazy? It's actually, and it's so true. And it also, I think it helps, well, I know it helps everybody else around you to help build them up and inspire them to be their best. So if you were at, and like you said, it's not about, oh, good, now I get to be lazy and just, sit around, eat bonbons and golf all day. That's not it at all. It's when
Mm-hmm.
you're utilizing the best of you. It's that old adage where work shouldn't feel like work, and it sounds
Mm-hmm.
so dumb. But really, if you are enjoying that because you're so good at that, right? That when you're over here doing this, you're, you know what I mean? You're consumed. It feels hard. And you're right, like that 10%, that feels so good
Mm-hmm.
that when you are your best, you're also allowing the people around you to step up to be their best. I just always feel like those are the best companies is when you have leadership that really owns that and works towards that because they, it just kind of trickles down, right?
Oh, it 100% does. Absolutely. And to add to that, I would also say people are going to follow your example. And everything we're talking about seems to be really emphasized in the entrepreneurial world, but you and I both know not everybody is cut from that ilk.
No.
But this same dynamic exists if you're a W-2 employee. You just have to ask the right questions or because we're able to not only do this at an individual level, also an organizational level. So where are your talents? What are the things within your job description or your role within the business that you're genuinely interested in, that really light you up, that maximize your productivity, but require not a lot of effort, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And, those opportunities also are great catalysts for growth and promotion and abundance and fulfillment, even in the role of an employee. So, while we celebrate these things in entrepreneurship, that same dynamic exists in organizational structure as well.
I love that.
We just we don't tend to talk about it in that context. But there's a great book, Conscious Capitalism by John Mackey. He was the one of the founding partners of Whole Foods, and he talks about this
Oh,
virtuous circle. And if you create what we help organizations do is create a culture where we're leveraging everyone from the janitor to the owner, visionary, founder. We're leveraging their talents and their genuine interests and finding roles inside the organization for them to thrive and flourish and maximize those things.
I love that. I mean, I absolutely love it because, like you said, I mean, I don't know, there's like this, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Well, not everybody does, and not everybody should. And
Mhm.
it's sometimes you can have, I mean, I know people that have the best job in the world for them. Like they absolutely love what they're doing. So if you absolutely love doing what you're doing, and then you've got great hobbies and your life is the way you want it, you don't have to have your own company. You don't have, why put all that extra stress and strain on your life thinking, oh, to make it in this world, I have to have my own
Mhm.
company or I have to be a CEO, right?
Right.
It's not about that at all. And that doesn't mean that when I hear like, your best life, doesn't have to be your best life
Right.
at all. And I
Mm-mm.
think for some reason in our society, that's what, everybody, oh, you have to have a yacht or, some crazy thing,
Yeah, those are what
some
we
crazy life, right?
yeah, those are what we call the victims of the comparison. Well,
Yeah.
they have it. They went after that. I should want that. I should go after that too. And it's,
Yep.
one of the gifts that we give our clients throughout this process is agency over the problems that they have, because the problems don't go away. Spoiler alert. We just get different problems. And
True.
and where the win is when the problems that you do have are the problems that you choose, you are winning.
Yeah, I like that. That's such a different place in life, isn't it? It really is.
It's counterintuitive and it sounds really crazy, but
I
it's
know.
it's true.
I know there's people out there going, no, but it's true. It is very true.
Hmm.
Yeah,
You know,
it is true.
I
So,
go ahead.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I ask people all the time, when they come to me and they want to start a gym, and I'm like, well, do you just want to train, or do you want to own a business? Because they're not the same thing. If you just want to do the job and be as profitable a technician as possible, you're compromising that by signing a lease,
Having
purchasing
employees.
hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment. You have to, you're not only managing your own stuff, you're also responsible for the individuals that make the business run. So are those the problems you want, or do you want different problems? So we we have
So
we we
true.
have we have to filter that out, and not to talk anybody out of these things, but these are the questions that many, the vast majority, don't consider.
And there's the mental game of it too. So if you're completely doing a 180, let's say
Hmm.
you're in corporation and you're high up in the corporation and you decide, I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to do this thing. And I'm going to tell you an experience of mine so it makes
Yeah.
sense. But so, I was that corporate, executive, blah, blah, blah. And that was the world that I was going to say I loved, but I didn't really love it. I think there was aspects of it that,
Hmm.
in my head, I played that game of, well, I should want this, right? Like this powerful, this is awesome. And it really got into where I was identifying as that person. Like that was my whole identity. So when I went and I changed and I started building my business 20 plus years ago,
Hmm.
I was happy about a lot of things, right? I didn't have to get into an office every day. I didn't have to deal with certain aspects of being in corporate life. But what I was not prepared for was the mental change of I wanted something for so long. And even though I
Hmm.
figured out I didn't want that anymore, when I was challenged on that, it made me feel less than. So, as an example, this is way pre COVID, way pre
Hmm.
Zoom calls. But when I started working from home, the feedback from the friends of mine that were, again, in that corporate world were like, oh, it must be so nice to work from home. I mean, you only have to be there a couple hours and you get to be in your pajamas. And back then it wasn't the case. We didn't have Zoom calls. I would,
Hmm.
travel to my clients and it was a lot of work plus all of the business owning, like
Hmm.
you said, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot more to it. It wasn't, I just didn't get to consult. There was so much to it. And I was not prepared for the mental part of changing my identity
Mm.
because I put so much stock on who I am as that previous person that I was uncomfortable. Even though it was exactly what I wanted, I was uncomfortable in this new role in life. And it
Hmm.
took years before I embraced it in a way that I loved it instead of making excuses of, well, it's not all that, instead of just being like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like that would have shut it
Hmm.
down. Like, sucks to be you. Or, you know what I mean? I mean, really, right? Instead of
Yeah.
doing that, it hit my soul of
Hmm.
like, what did you give up? You were this cool person in my head.
Oh yeah.
I was not a cool person, but you know what I mean? Like you
Hmm.
had it all. And now I mean, it takes such courage to go away from that and start your own thing, but I couldn't embrace it.
Yeah.
And I don't think people sometimes are mentally prepared for the 180. And I think that too is why it helps to really assess of,
Oh
when
yeah.
I'm not in my good space, when I'm
Hmm.
when I'm heading down that road,
Yeah.
like what's going to take me out of it,
Well,
right?
and you bring up a really good point, in that assessment, because when you're lost in it, as 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 you were, we go to extremes in our mind. Well, like I don't like what I'm doing in this corporate environment. I'm going to go start my own thing, right?
Yeah.
When what may also be true, or more true, is I just need to change of environment.
Right.
I need to be in a different department. I need to be with different leadership, or I need to leverage a different and better skill set. Right. These are all the things that we can tease out so that we're not living in these dreams, because what you ultimately end up doing is just trading stress for stress.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
that's not helpful,
It does
you
not feel
know.
good.
No. So like, oh, I made this decision and I thought I would feel better, and but I really don't.
Right.
It's like the crash diet, or going from eating like absolute trash to vegetarian, and just like, oh, are you willing to weather that storm of discomfort to come out on the other side? And if
Yeah.
the answer is no, if your tolerance isn't there yet, then that's not necessarily the right move. So one of the things that we're also able to evaluate is which of these options is best, because going back to my client who was acquired, we really had three options. You could continue doing what you're doing and just be absolutely miserable. That's
That's
option
an
A.
option.
Option B, you can invest in the manpower and the infrastructure so that you can sit atop your company and let your team execute in their genius. That's option B. That's going to extend our time horizon, take some time. You're going to have to be deeper in the weeds so you can develop these people. Or you can hire that interim CEO, position yourself for acquisition, and really do what you want to do. So, he could have realistically chosen any one of those three options,
Hmm.
but he did not. The only option he knew prior to our work together was option A. This is just, he had settled in. This is the way it's going to be. This is how it is. I've accepted my fate.
Right. Yeah, I think I talked about that in another episode about
Hmm.
sometimes it's our truth that we've told ourselves is our truth is our truth until we
Hmm.
realize that that doesn't have to be our truth anymore. And sometimes it really takes somebody else some help to really understand that that doesn't have to be your reality
Hmm.
anymore. You can accept
100%.
it, right? So
Absolutely.
before we head out of this, I want to ask you,
Yeah.
so if when somebody, let's say somebody is ready and they say, I want to be assessed at that level. I
Hmm.
want that kind of help. What should they do when they're looking? What's the first thing they should do when they're looking for a good matching coach? Because I know we've talked about in the past, not every coach is a good match of where you're at in life, right?
Hmm.
There's different levels. So what would your one bit of advice be to somebody who's starting out looking for that coach? What should they look for?
So first and foremost, when you're deciding who that person of influence is going to be for you, what's the immediate issue that I'm trying to resolve, and find the person that resolves that issue. I'm an alignment guy. If you feel like your life is out of whack and you're not making any headway in any particular direction, you just feel absolutely stuck, I can help you fix that. Right?
Yeah,
Bring your entire lifestyle, your life into alignment. Versus, I'm not an operations guy. I'm not going to tell you how to fix your business.
right.
I'm not the guy for that.
Got it. Yeah,
Right?
so you really got to hone in on what's the next step for you?
Hmm.
Do you want a 180?
Hmm.
Right? You're kind of a 180 guy.
Yeah,
Do you want a
100%.
180 or are you just looking to make increment, like, you know what I mean? Like an
Hmm.
incremental change of like, I just don't know how to do this.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Or right.
Hmm.
And so, and
Absolutely.
there's coaches for all levels, but I think
Absolutely.
that's an important thing to, and I probably knew it, but I hadn't really acknowledged the fact of
Mhm.
there are different levels at different stages of life, and that's
Oh,
awesome,
for
right?
sure. Yeah. One of the things that really stuck with me when I gained this understanding, like the role of a CEO, right? It
Yeah,
is less a position and more so a skill set.
for sure.
Okay. So there are CEOs that will take a company from 500,000 to public. That's a skill set.
Hmm.
Beyond that, it takes a different skill set, different CEO to take it from public to 500 million. It takes another skill set. You know what I mean? So,
Right. Or take it from private to public. You
right.
know, there's
So
CEOs that just
that's
do
it.
that.
That's their sweet spot.
That's absolutely true.
There
Yeah.
I have a client who actually facilitates that stuff, and his skill set is taking a company from 5 to 25 million. That's his sweet spot. He can do that over
Yeah.
and over and over again.
Isn't that cool?
Once you hit 25 million and one penny, hire the next one,
Yeah.
you know.
I
And
love that.
so like so we work with our clients in increments, because unless we've identified the next easiest step, or where we're going from, once we get from A to B, unless we've identified what C is, we need time to integrate B,
Right.
and you see a lot of my clients prior to working with us are, they've just hopped from consultant to coach to consultant to coach. And it's like, well, what have you stopped to integrate? Right.
Yeah.
We
Right.
just start, more knowledge, more knowledge, more knowledge, more knowledge. And it's
Right.
like, well, you need time to apply, right?
Right.
And that's where the accountability comes in. The accountability end of our relationship, beyond the progress of our relationship, comes in. And we're able to facilitate that as well. But it's, I had a client, we worked together for a year, and his A to B took us 7 months.
Wow.
And so we spent the remaining 5 just simply stabilizing the progress that he had made.
No, that's actually something for a whole nother episode, honestly. You know what I mean? Actually,
Oh,
when you just brought
100%.
that up, I'm like, oh my gosh, Michael's coming back and we're talking about that because that
Happy to do it.
stabilization's a period of time too. So,
Mhm.
and I've got to wrap this up, but
Yeah,
I'm so excited because I think I've thought of 3 episodes already that you're so good at.
I'm for it.
But I want to make sure that people, if
Yeah.
they're ready and they want, your expertise, can you just tell us what you're working on and how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, 100%. I'm just going to give you my email address. It's Michael, Mycal, at next level, P as in Papa, F as in Foxtrot, C as in Charlie.com. Michael at nextlevelpfc.com. Shoot me an email. Let's connect. We'll do a lifestyle assessment and see at which level we can work, and we'll start facilitating that progress always.
Fit 50 fabulous for all you women out there.
Let's go.
Thank you so much for joining me. I love your company. You are a rock star at what you do. And I just absolutely love having you. I can't wait for our next time together. It's going to be so much fun. I just really thank you for taking your time today.
My absolute pleasure, and I'm grateful to be here with you, having this conversation and pouring into your audience, and I look forward to doing it again.
And we will, absolutely. And thank you all for being here today. You can find me at my website, ultimate180.com. And you can find our podcast there on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast shows.